Unmuted. Muted. Unmuted. Muted. Unmuted. Muted.
Mrs. Hona and me, and everyone else, if you'll take note of them, but we three are the committee members. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have to say.
Unmuted.
Who's muted?
Discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have an agenda. The minutes, similarly, looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have minutes. Public participation. Anyone want to speak? Josh, anyone out there? No one's out there, so I won't read that. Introduction. Discussion and next steps. Well, now we get to the meat of the meeting. Basically a one-item agenda. But if you're going to have one item, this should be it. So Mrs. Ferguson,
This should be, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce Joanne Creedon, whom you all know and love. And she has prepared a lovely, informative, powerful presentation for all of us that I think we're all going to learn from in our ever-changing city, right?
Thank you, Sue. I certainly hope so. That was my goal. So I'm delighted to be here tonight to represent our EL students, our EL staff and families, and to have this opportunity to tell you about our students and our work. And I'm just going to ask you to hold questions to the end. So I'll get through the presentation and then there'll be time.
Does Josh have it? You have it, Josh, right? Okay.
Yes.
He's just crawling it up now.
And so, here we go.
Your fans.
Yes. I couldn't have gone any better.
You see these little sprouts, right? So I want you to think of our students as little sprouts, little seedlings. Thank you, Josh. Today's agenda is to share with you some information about our students, what's important in our work, the why behind our work and what that is, some data and implications and appreciation. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I have a little do now for you all to do. It's a do now. It's a simple Algebra 1 problem. I'm sure you all took Algebra 1 and passed. You might be a little rusty. But if you try, really focus, I'm sure you can do it.
Or maybe if we speak a little louder.
Yes, it's a do now.
Yeah.
And if you're having trouble with the calculations, if you could at least tell me what the problem is about, you'll get partial credit. I'll give you a couple of minutes.
I'm almost there.
Okay, we'll get to the answers at the end, so just hold it, Mr. Putnam, okay? We'll be checking these at the end. All right, thank you, Josh. The next slide, please. So the next slide this is our essential question, really. How do we create fertile spaces for our students to learn and grow? Helene Marshall has done a lot of work on language learning and students with limited and interrupted formal education. And this really should be our focus, district-wide, school-wide, within the classroom. How do we create these spaces?
For all students.
For all students. I'd like you to meet somebody who represents our students. So on the next slide, there's a short video. It's about 3 minutes long. You're going to meet a student named Moises. And consider, what does he need to learn and grow?
I'm going to meet us real quick.
We're going to create, you got to read. First on page 3.
¿Qué dijo? ¿A poco va a empezar el examen? No, es una práctica.
We're going to take notes from the story and we're going to turn it into a math problem and we're going to walk through it together, okay? So the boy ran 3 blocks. So everyone write 3 blocks.
I didn't even know.
How long did it take him to run 3 blocks? Michelle?
6 minutes.
Very good, 6 minutes. All right, so then we're gonna take 3 blocks and 6 minutes,
¿Por qué el
right?
niño corre con los bloques? ¿Qué? Sí, ¿por qué el niño corre con los bloques? No,
Okay, so the
corre 3
questions are gonna
calles.
go on to ask us, how long will it take him to run 20 blocks? What do we do? How many minutes is that per block?
8 minutes.
Try and remember to raise your hand if you want to answer, okay? No, it's not 8 minutes. Michelle?
18 minutes?
Nope, not 18 minutes. Yes, Enrique?
40?
40, yeah, very good. How'd you get 40?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, 40 is the right answer. How did you get it?
I forgot.
You forgot. Okay. Does anyone know how we get 40? Yes, Moises. Yep, that's right. Very good. Great. Can you tell us how you got that?
40?
Yep, very good. But can you explain to the class what you did here, how you got that?
Por ti.
Okay, all right, you guys, settle down.
I feel so dumb.
Joe, do you want to lose your recess?
No.
Okay, then. Thank you, Moises.
Can you help me, please?
Can you take a walk with me? I don't want you to worry about the test, okay, Moises?
Sí, estoy preocupada sobre el examen. La directora Rosa dijo que todavía tenemos que hacer.
Just try your best, okay? Do you understand? Not importante.
Sí, sí es importante.
You're right, Moises. It is important.
So just keep the experience of Moises in your mind. Before we begin, I just want to also share this slide with you because in education, we love jargon, and more than jargon, we love acronyms. And so in literature and research, in presentations, you might see or hear any of these terms. We're all talking basically about the same group of students. ESL students, English as a second language students, were for a time referred to as limited English proficient students, but that seemed so deficit-based that then the terminology changed to English language learners. But then that seemed like a misnomer because certainly all of our students, K-12, are studying English. We continue to take English classes all through school. So that didn't seem right. So then it was English learners. But then that didn't seem to honor or recognize the fact that some of our students are between languages. Some of them have 2 languages already at home and they're learning a 3rd language. So multilingual learners is now the term that is most frequently used. But for the sake of this presentation, I'll probably be using ELs or switching between them. But I just want you to know that it's the same, it's all the same. 30% of all Torrington Public Schools students have a language other than English at home. This is not all English learners, but the entire population of Torrington Public Schools. And that represents 40 different home languages. And from the chart, you can see that by far Spanish is our largest percentage, but we also have 35 others, right? We have Vietnamese and Bengali next, Portuguese, Albanian, and so it goes. Not all students who come from a language other than English are classified as English learners, and I'll get to that in a moment. But next slide, please. I do want to make sure we emphasize that bilingualism is an asset. We want to embrace and celebrate multilingualism in our students and in our families. Recently, Megan Alavicki Flick, is the State Department of Ed EL consultant. And she did a TED Talk, and I'm just going to take some of the language that she took because she said the fact of the matter is that being multilingual matters, both for the individual and our society. Speaking multiple languages expands our worldview. It connects us to our own identity and links us to our communities, our cultures, and our families. So we are recognizing this when students get to high school with the seal of biliteracy. But it would be great to really celebrate and acknowledge and emphasize this pre-K-12, not wait till that point. But I'm delighted that Torrington High School started to award the seal of biliteracy 2 years ago. Next slide, please. The seal of biliteracy prepares students to be 21st century global citizens acknowledges that mastery of 2 or more languages is a valuable asset, and it provides recognition to the English learners for the fact that they have developed English as well as kept or maintained their primary language. Currently, 49 states and the District of Columbia have approved the statewide seal of biliteracy, and in Connecticut, about half of the districts are currently awarded the seal. Couple more things: that it's affixed on diplomas and appears on students' transcripts, highlights their ability, shows potential employers that this student has the ability to effectively communicate with people from 2 or more languages and cultures, both orally and in writing. And some colleges will now accept the seal for college credit. Next slide, please. In 2022, that was the first year we awarded it, and 21 students, 21 graduating seniors earned the seal of biliteracy in these 7 languages: Albanian, Bosnian, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Vietnamese. Now, obviously, we do not teach all of these languages in our school, in our high school. So this is a great tribute, really, to the students and their families for maintaining that home language and making sure that students got to that high level. Next slide, please. And last year, we awarded the seal of biliteracy to 22 graduating seniors in 6 languages. Again, which of those do we teach in the high school? Spanish is the only one. Again, a tribute to that home language, that primary language. Just a little note, one of the students, Haja Diallo, earned it in 2 languages, French and Fulani, so that accounts for 2 of our bullet points there. 1 student, 2 languages. And our valedictorian last year, Faisal Alam, earned his seal of biliteracy. And as you may remember from his graduation speech, if you were at graduation, he thanked first his family, of course, all his teachers, but did a special shout out to his ESL teachers. So I think that that's notable. Next slide, please. Oh my goodness, would be my caption. Since I took this position in July of 2021, at that point, 11% of our population were English learners, under 400. You can see the growth over the past 2 years. And right now, we are at 603, which is about 15.6, which is 15.6% of our population. So that indicates quite a growth. Next. Here it is by school. And the numbers fluctuate because we have students coming all the time. And we do have some students moving out, of course, but as the graph indicates, we have more coming in than are leaving us. So now you might also wonder, well, so at the elementary schools, the primary schools, we have 20%. That's significant. So the average, in every class, there's at least 4 students who are English learners. And there's also the fact that at those lower levels, students haven't yet had a chance to acquire enough English to exit. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. Next slide, please. So where are these students coming from? Where are newcomers coming from? The packet that you have, actually, I had not put everything on. And so this slide represents, in the past 2 years, the countries from which our students are coming. Ecuador, Dominican Republic, those 2 continue to be the largest population, but also Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Spain, Poland, Puerto Rico, not a country, US territory, but any of those students need English language services as well. Chile, Venezuela, Colombia, Paraguay, Saudi Arabia, Philippines, Jordan, plus It's only January 3rd. So we don't know where they're coming from. Next.
Joanne, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it anyway.
Mhm.
While you're on this slide, can you just share with the group, this is almost a daily occurrence, right? That
This- Correct.
I don't know that people are aware that on just about every day, right? We
Certainly every week we are welcoming new students.
welcoming newcomers,
Newcomers.
people who have children who have no English.
And
So
I'm
that's what
glad you
newcomer
paused
means,
me.
because
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, a newcomer coming into the country, into our schools. And so I do want to point out, so that these students are finding themselves not only needing to navigate a new school, but a new language, a new community, a new set of customs, usually a new climate as well, and frequently new family dynamics, which is just a whole nother layer or level of complexity here, because in some cases, one parent came years ago and has been trying to get the rest of the family here, or a student comes and is living with another member of the family. So that's a lot for a little person to be dealing with. That would be a lot for any of us to be dealing with. So that's just a whole nother level here. So the resilience of these kids is certainly an asset that they bring. Next slide, please. The question, so how are students identified? I'm frequently asked this because, we don't willy-nilly identify students as English learners. It starts with the home language survey, which is part of the registration packet, and it's a requirement. And it asks these 3 questions. What is the primary language used in the home, regardless of the language spoken by the student? What is the language most often spoken by the student? And what is the language the student first acquired? Now, if the answer to any of these is other than English, that does not still mean that that student is an English learner, but then triggers an assessment process. And then an English learner staff person, one of the ESL teachers, would administer a standardized assessment. At kindergarten level, it's just based on the oral, which is nice, of course. They're kindergartners, for heaven's sakes. But that's what determines whether a student is identified as an English learner. And then parents are notified, and parents are notified annually of their student's progress. A parent can refuse services. So once we identify, we say your child has been identified and is eligible for services. A parent can refuse that if they wish, but once we have identified them, we must still give them that standardized test every year. The last links. Next slide, please. But there is no single profile of our ELs or MLs. Some are newcomers who come to us with a high level of literacy in their first language, or with a high level of academic preparation. And some of our new students come to us as this group we refer to as SLIFE, limited or interrupted formal education, that might have very little literacy in their home language. We have refugees, we have immigrants, we have unaccompanied minors, and some of our ELs are also identified as students needing special education at some point in their school career. Next slide, please. And so this group has become increasingly just a wonderful challenge, but it is a challenge because at the upper level, we don't have much time. If students come to us in the elementary grades, we've got the gift of time. But at the secondary level, we don't have that. So it does become an additional challenge. But if we use and consider their first language, their traditions, their culture, their life experiences, they did things, they know things prior to coming here. And so our challenge is to figure out what is that, and then to leverage that, to use that in planning instruction. But they're certainly not empty slates. not empty vessels for us to fill. And I'm happy to tell you that I'm part of a statewide action committee on working with SLIFE students and trying to figure out, and this is not just Torrington, this is a statewide situation and nationwide as well. And so trying to figure out what are the best practices, what are the best programming options. So that's what I do in my spare time. Josh, thank you. So clearly, these students have a unique academic, social, and emotional, both strengths and challenges. And the most important first step is to establish and maintain a relationship. One would argue that would be true for all students, right? I do want to share a little story that I heard last year. I was in a webinar, one of these statewide meetings, and I heard about a Vietnamese student in an ESL class who was doing nothing. Not doing his work, not appearing to be listening, had his head down most of the time. And his teacher, of course, was incredibly frustrated. And one day the student had an assigned detention. And of course, who was it with? But with this very same teacher who was so frustrated with him. But he noticed, the student noticed a family picture on the teacher's desk, and he asked him about the photo, which began a conversation. The teacher shared about his family, about his hobbies. I think he liked fishing and soccer. In the following weeks, the student seemed to do a complete turnaround. And the teacher was in shock. He didn't want to say anything because he was afraid it would jinx the whole thing, the fact that the student had turned around. But finally asked the student what happened. And the student said, "Oh, well, I didn't know you. But now I know you, so I can work for you. And I will work for you." The power of relationships, right? But it was just a beautiful story. I wanted to share that with you. Next slide, please. Jim Cummins is a longtime researcher, guru in the field of language acquisition. And this is, I think, a very important quote. "When students' identities are affirmed and extended through their interactions with teachers, they are more likely to apply themselves academically and participate actively in instruction. By contrast, when students' languages, cultures, and experiences are ignored or excluded in classroom interactions, these students are at a disadvantage. Everything they have previously learned about life and the world is dismissed as irrelevant to school learning." So keeping that in mind, and also, next slide, please, the fact that our goal as educators is to see our students as asset-filled beings, right? All that they come with, and apply that awareness in classroom instruction. Next slide. This is a great slide to use for all occasions. All of our students are all of our students. And this is sort of a mantra we have not adapted, but taken on, because this is really at the heart of all that we do. And our goal as an EL department is to increase the capacity of every Torrington Public School educator to teach our ELs. Next slide, please. But here's some of the why behind the work. Our program goals are aligned with the law, Civil Rights Act 64, Equal Educational Opportunities Act, some court cases, the Plyer versus Doe, for example, states that says that states cannot deny students a free public education on account of their immigration status. The Every Student Succeeds Act expanded what was required of No Child Left Behind and created new standards for English language proficiency, and so forth. So all of that is part of the why behind our work. Next slide. Here's some more whys. The State Department of Ed has given us guidelines to follow, including that annual assessment that I referred to, the last links. We have requirements of the state bilingual grant that we take, the federal Title III grant that we use. There's Connecticut legislation regarding bilingual ed, Civil Rights Act, Office of Civil Rights, and I would say that under all of this is this very last bullet, which is the most critical and the most important, that it is our ethical responsibility as educators to do our very best for every student. Equitable access for all students. Next slide, please. People frequently ask about that Connecticut bilingual statute. And so the statute says that a bilingual program is mandated when there's 20 or more English learners of one language in one school. I'm not sure if that's my time.
That's a duck.
Some districts have a dual language bilingual program, and that is everyone within a school is learning 2 languages simultaneously. That has been proven to be the most effective bilingual program model, but that's not what we have in Torrington. We have a transitional bilingual ed program, which gives 3 years, 30 school months, and in Torrington, students receive academic and language supports as needed in Spanish while simultaneously learning English. Increasing amounts of English, decreasing amounts of Spanish are used. Just to give you a broader perspective, in Connecticut, the programs are mostly Spanish, but there's also, as you may already know, right, Portuguese in Danbury, New Britain has Arabic, Norwich and Stamford have Haitian Creole, New Haven has a Pashto, so those are just some samplings. So what does this look like in the schools? In our K-5 schools, a portion or period each day, students are brought to work with a bilingual teacher certified in bilingual ed, and a newcomer would get more service than that single period per day, would get a double block at least, as well as getting bilingual support in the classroom from a paraprofessional or the bilingual teacher, typically in math or science class. In the middle school, we have bilingual classes taught in Spanish with increasing amounts of English used. And at the high school, students take a series of ESL classes, and we offer sheltered instruction in social studies classes and math classes. In those classes, the idea is both content and language are the goals, and Spanish can be used. At the high school, we also have a part-time tutor who goes in math classes and science classes. District-wide, we were also fortunate, not part of our bilingual program, but we had a need for an Arabic tutor, and we were able to find an Arabic tutor who is now working in 3 of our schools. But the goal of all of this, the goal of native language support, is to be able to teach grade level content while also a student is acquiring English. We can't wait. We can't say, okay, we're just gonna have you learn English, and then once you're there, right, we're gonna give you that grade level content. We need to do both. We can't wait. Next slide, please. What we do in all of these areas, I would say that we are a work in progress, always striving to improve in all areas. So school improvement seems like the absolute place to be sharing this information with you all. Our work includes welcoming new students and families, selecting appropriate resources, providing professional learning opportunities to all of our staff. We are part of that benchmark implementation, the new literacy program, K-5. There are 2 components to that are specifically for English learners. One is a newcomer program called Hello, and the other is Express, which is a companion piece. We work to support the bilingualism and the seal of biliteracy, and we also facilitate the translators and interpreters that are used for parents' meetings. and events school-wide and district-wide. And the next slide is just to emphasize the fact that family engagement is really a key part of what we do. And again, building relationships. The pictures here show both ends of the spectrum in terms of our continuum of services. In that top picture, Jenny Garcia is at Vogel. It was last spring. It was the orientation or the welcoming of incoming kindergarten parents, and she was there to help facilitate that. And the bottom slide shows a FAFSA parent meeting in the high school library. So our seniors are getting that experience of just able to really tap into, and the goal here is so that all of our parents are totally engaged and feel like they're partners in what we're doing in the schools. Next slide, please. And then there are just tasks, things that we have to do, and these are shared at the school level: the screening, parent notification, scheduling, para-tutor assignments, selecting resources, collaborating with each other and with classroom teachers, determining accommodations, and the translating, and so forth. Next slide. And speaking of last links, this is the season for last links, and this is our summative high stakes test. The testing window is January 2nd to March 1st. So in all of our schools, we will soon be beginning. But first we have to finish some other testing before we start this testing. Go figure. Anyway, so it's the annual standardized assessment. It assesses the 4 domains of language: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It provides scores. These are levels of beginning. A beginner would be level 1, early intermediate, intermediate, proficient, level 4, above proficient 5, but it also gives us scaled scores. In order to reach mastery, when a student has exited our program, they have to achieve an overall proficient in all the domains, including, and this was added just a couple of years ago, both a 4 or a 5, that proficient or above proficient in both reading and writing, to ensure that that literacy piece is intact before a student is exited. The next slides, I do have some slides that are the results of the 2023 last year's testing. And so this slide shows you that we had 35 students who met mastery last year. You can see that it's typically in those, there's kind of a jump in 4th and 5th grade because they have then acquired enough language to test proficient. And then again, now you might say, well, gosh, last year we had 500 something, why only 35 students? Next slide, please. Why does it take so long? Why does it take so long? Well, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to study another language, right? And then think about having that other language and mastering the academics of your peers at the same time. That's quite a challenge. Social language just takes usually a year or 2. Kids are very quick to acquire that social language of, the recess, making their way known around the classroom. But academic language can take 4 to 7 years because the demands are so high. Next slide, please. So last year's results, the top chart is showing the state of Connecticut results. The bottom chart is showing our district's, Torrington's results. There are just a couple of things I want to, so in past presentations, committee meetings, you've heard about growth rate and average percentage of target achieved, but just to review this. So growth rate is a percentage of students who met their growth target, and every student has an individual target based on whatever their baseline score was. And the state has decided, okay, so it might take 4 to 7 years. We're going to say 5 years. So the state has determined targets based on 5 years to achieve proficiency from wherever you are. So that's what sets the annual targets for those students. But if you just look at growth rate, then it's either they made it or they didn't, right? And it's not capturing all the kids who, well, they didn't make that target, but they came close, or they're getting there, right? So that's why the state has adopted this average percentage of target achieved. It looks at all students and factors. What percentage of their target did they achieve? And that's what figures into the school and district accountability index. And that's what the state uses to measure us by. Important to note that any progress made by newcomers is not reflected here because it's a matched cohort. So it's only students, it would be students who had took the test the year before and then last year, right? So we're not getting any kind of credit for whatever growth our newcomers make. Hopefully we will in the next series of tests. Next slide, please. Oh, no, I'm sorry, go back. We can do that. But you can see, so the state of Connecticut, the literacy average percentage of target achieved was 55.3, and for us was 55.8. I don't think that's a significant, we're in the ballpark with the state, be nice if we were like way above there, but at least we're in the same area, slightly above, and oral scores 56 versus 57.4 for Torrington. And then when we look at the individual schools, and the last time I presented, next slide please, I got a little bit of grief for just sticking with those numbers that came on the state slides. You couldn't see them. So there's those percentages in circles. Can you just move us a little bit up or down? Sorry. That's okay. So it's, it's this green, this average percentage of target achieved, that's important to note. And so the literacy is on the left side, oral is on the right side, so that's Vogel, very strong. Again, remembering that, our youngest kids have the best opportunities. There's more visuals, there's more hands-on, it's more in context. Next. Torring Ford, similar. Next slide. Forbes. Next slide. Southwest. So all of the elementary schools are relatively similar. Next slide. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, okay, TMS. It becomes harder as these kids get older. There's lots of things going on. There's lots of things, as Ronnie can tell you, right? Lots of things going on with them personally. I think with the fact we're sometimes reaching some of these kids who are long-term ELs, that they've been tested every year. And some of these students, this also represents some of these students are students with disabilities. And so they're struggling to pass that reading and writing portion. Next slide, please.
And by the time they get there, they're changed. They have 7 teachers, or right?
Right,
So
right.
when you talk about the relationship piece and the importance of that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And similarly at the high school. Next slide. So if you can think back to Moises and consider what he needs and what we need to do for students like Moises. I think that these bullets kind of capture it, basically, to establish and maintain a relationship with students and their families, to embrace and celebrate the assets that they bring, to embrace and celebrate bilingualism, to provide comprehensible input. And this is key, because in that first slide, or that video of Moises, you saw, so he wasn't even sure what was going on. Was this the real test? Was this a practice test? He didn't know. And then within the problem, there's blocks, right? Blocks, and he's thinking of the kind of blocks you play with or you use as math manipulatives, not as blocks that city blocks. So comprehensible input is key. And we do that with appropriate speech. And I don't mean appropriate versus inappropriate speech. I mean speech that's appropriate for a student's proficiency level, right? A slower rate, the enunciation, you use simple sentences, you avoid idioms and sarcasm with newcomers. They don't understand that. Clear explanation of academic tasks and a variety of techniques to make concepts clear. We want to create also opportunities for oral language and student discourse. This is a key focus of the district. Our professional learning last year was focused on this. So important and so valuable for these students in particular. And we always want to integrate literacy and content. Next slide, please. So I want to share with you just a few quick glimpses into the classroom. The first one is actually, next slide, part of our summer. This was our newcomer class, and the summer newcomer class. This was TMS and THS. We had newcomers from both schools combined. And the class was based on the theme of plastic pollution. So students learned the vocabulary of materials, animals, geographical features, rivers, lakes, oceans, etc. The importance of reducing, reusing, recycling. They did some hands-on. Here they were doing an experiment at the beginning of the 4 weeks, starting with biodegradability, which materials would biodegrade, which wouldn't. So again, trying to keep the content appropriate for the grade level, but break down the language. So we used videos and read alouds. And we also included things like social language because these students needed opportunities to practice that, even as simple as ordering what they were going to have for lunch, but again, with the visuals. And we had to, of course, have some soccer games throughout because that is an international language. Next slide, please. Here's a group of kindergarten students learning about school rules using Unit 3 in Benchmark Express. Why do we have rules? Next slide.
Thank you.
So in addition to chunking materials and making tasks absolutely clear, we also, whenever possible, use realia. Realia is just a fancy word saying, instead of a picture of a water bottle, I'm going to have the real water bottle, because then I can touch it, I can feel it, I can put descriptors to it. And here's a third grade group at Vogel making observations of the woolly bear caterpillar, which incorporated vocabulary and grammar, asking and answering questions appropriately, and making connections to the natural world. The next slide. Students at Forbes practicing prefixes. Next slide. Bilingual science class at TMS studying the skeletal system, emphasizing the visuals. THS students studying places in the United States, regional, this was Northeast region, I guess they were doing that time. Next, oh no. I have to give you access? Because this is a treat, this last little video. It's very short, it's like 30 seconds, but it's worth every second. Well, he's getting that. I'm going to. Excuse me a moment.
Have to tear that, see?
Okay.
have a video on your computer. Yes, actually, that would be fine. If I-
And this one, go list on here. It's okay, I'm just discovering it. Wow. Uh-huh, it's not supposed to be there.
Catch that giant person here? She's still good.
I don't know how that happened. It was going so- Not really. It didn't seem to-
Did I just play it on mine?
This John Stable cousin. He had a tear there for a while, so.
It won't broadcast, but it's 30 seconds.
With my things, so that
Okay.
came out.
Sorry, this isn't gonna broadcast, but you'll get it here. You've got the, can you just pull up the pictures? Because it's like so cute. This is high school.
I got Mariah Carey beat.
Dramatic presentation there at the end. So I wanted to make sure you got that. Okay, so at the end, what we need to do is to continually assess the conditions needed to create these fertile spaces for our students to learn and grow and respond accordingly. Next slide, please. I want to thank all of our EL teachers who worked so hard, so tirelessly in all 6 schools. Next slide. Our support staff, which includes the tutors, the translators, and the paraprofessionals. They do an amazing job. And I also want to thank all Torrington Public School educators, because the time that these students are not with the EL teacher or the EL para or the tutor, they are in your classroom, and you do an amazing job. Well, I was finishing this presentation yesterday. Peter Michelson shared a letter with me, which he gave me permission to share. And I've read it a couple of times. Every time I read it, I get choked up. Here we go. So this was written to local teacher Rachel Placentino from a former student. Dear Mrs. Placentino, I have no clue where to start, but from the end, which is the here and now, and make my way back. I know it's been a while, as in, let me see, a decade and 1 year. I believe I was your 2012 class. It's crazy now that I'm writing it and saying it aloud, a decade. But no matter how much time has passed, the memories never fade. The Muhammad Kabir that was in your first grade class, although very different now, still finds some parts of my present self from that distant past. I never had the chance to appreciate you, nor had I realized how grateful I was to have you be my very first teacher, especially after immigrating to the United States then and struggling to speak English. And currently at 19, I'd say it's better late than never to say I appreciate you. I am appreciative, beyond grateful, and above all blessed to have you be my very first teacher coming to America. I haven't given it much thought till now of how lucky my situation was as an immigrant, which I may have taken for granted, because of how genuinely caring and full of life you were as a teacher. You brought about a secure and nurturing environment, not just for learning. The fondest memories I have of us is not the learning part, that is the stressful minute math worksheets, but rather the social development parts. You inspired me to be kind, and a part of that included me wanting to make your day by bringing Bengali-style food from home. I remember very clearly, but at the same time surreally, of how spicy the food was, but you nonetheless enjoyed it alongside your family. I strongly believe your impact as a teacher sowed the seed for my drive to being a gentler, kinder human being today. On top of all that, you've set the standard for what I expect from my teachers going forward. And as a college freshman at the end of his fall semester, attending the University of Connecticut Stores, I've realized that up to this point, not many have met the Placentino standard. I should have probably patented and trademarked this revolutionary scale of measure. I'd use it over ratemyprofessor.com any day. All jokes aside, I genuinely hope you and your family are doing well, and I want to let you know that I am also doing well, although I almost failed the class, Chemistry 1, and that I hope for nothing more than the best for you, and I always have. I want you to know that no matter which direction I take with my life and wherever I end up, the journey began with you. With sincere appreciation, Mohammed Kabir. The power of relationship.
It's beautiful.
Can you just go back to the presentation real quick? The last slide is to thank you, the board, for your continuing support. And actually, the next slide also, kind of fibbing, it's not the last slide. This slide, how did you do? Not so good. Well, what if, go to the next slide. What might have helped you? What if I gave you a picture to set up a context? What if I gave you a word bank? What if I gave you a bilingual glossary? And what about highlighting certain key aspects of the problem? Then at least you might have known that I was asking for something about the speed of the boat on the river, right? And upstream, downstream, what was the speed of the boat and what was the current, the speed of the current. That's what it's asking. But, you know, the power of supports, the power of just using a few strategies. Next slide.
Should say preguntitas because we don't have that much more time.
Preguntitas, senor.
There's one page that got stapled to the packet that the last page, the one you're holding, Patrick, that was just left on the copier, I guess, so that's not, yeah.
There's
Anyway,
always,
we have time for little questions, little questions.
Yeah,
What are we?
The last page, can you give it back to Steve?
yeah. Thank you. And how our friend over there, please.
You have it, yeah.
So anyway, any questions? We have a little bit of time, Yes.
Okay. My question, I dog-eared the page, but now I can't find it. So the person comes in and you assess them, but how do you assess them if you don't know their language?
You do what you did, explain what you did last summer. When you had the kid come in who didn't speak, it was an Arabic language, I believe you needed to say.
yeah, well, we do have to give an assessment in English. And if we know that they don't have anything, and then if it's an upper level student, I mean, so then we know that they're newcomers and they basically need starting at the ground level, right?
How do
They
you,
need, I'm not sure that
okay, if they have no English,
Mhm.
and how do you communicate with them?
So you use pictures, you use gestures.
Google Translate.
Well,
Hands.
in the days before Google Translate, sometimes, so we do use Google Translate.
They speak.
I'm sorry?
I think she's trying to ask is how do you know and identify what language they speak? Because there's
Oh,
different types
gotcha.
of Spanish, there's all different types of things, because you can't just
Okay.
put someone that is Dominican and expect them to understand Portuguese and stuff like that, but it's two different forms of Spanish.
Well, so, right, we have to try to identify with the help of the family what the child
So the
comes
whole
with.
family comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, or we reach out, and that's why we use, so in addition to the Spanish translation, translators that we have live in the schools, we use ITI, we use a translation service, so that if somebody comes in who is Portuguese speaking and we can't don't have a Portuguese speaker available, then we'll use that phone service or the video connection, kind of like the hospital does, to connect with.
Remember
with
last
everyone.
summer when there was a student coming in from one of the Middle Eastern countries and you knew ahead of time and you got something out to the board asking if anybody could help find somebody?
Right.
Remember that? And we did.
And that's actually how I eventually got, it was, this person knows this person who knows this person.
Right.
And so, and the fact that we've got 40 languages within our TPS community, usually there's somebody who can at least help us temporarily until we get a firm handle on what the language proficiency
Time
is.
for one more question here,
can I
and then we can call Mrs. Creedon. I'm sure you'd be delighted to speak to anybody at length if they were to contact you personally,
This is
right?
my passion.
Right.
Of course I would.
One-
Go ahead.
What about ASL?
So yes, that is another language, right? And so,
Is there, is there,
yes, we have, so that same translation service
does?
does
right.
ASL.
Okay, Jeff, you want to ask
So,
one
yeah,
quick
one
question?
quick
Can you do it?
I can do it.
Okay.
Do we help these families as they come in become a part of the community by introducing them to others? I saw the percentages, and that indicates there's 4 or 5 Albanian families or 4 or 5 Venezuelan. Do we help put them together? It helps us too, I'm sure, because there's somebody to help with the translation, but it helps give them a sense of community. Do we help match those?
Right, and we do try to, for any school event or school activity, to try to bring in families. I think that's usually the best way. Bogle had an Earth Day celebration 2 years ago that was incredible because apparently the only people who had been personally contacted by phone were our Spanish-speaking families. And all these Spanish-speaking families came out to clean up and plant and do whatever one does at an Earth Day celebration and connected with each other. So I think that those kinds of activities are a great way to promote that. And I also just want to clarify one thing, and I know I'm over time, but so we might use a family member or somebody that we know in the short run, in the interim. But if we're talking about a PPT or a health issue, a behavioral issue, we want to make sure that we have someone who's vetted to be an interpreter, and that's why we use the translation service. So, some people can help us for like social things, for just a quick outreach, but we want to make sure that we have the appropriate level of translation. Thank you for inviting me, Mr.
No,
Kisko.
thank you for coming, and thank you for a very extensive. No, last time you were rushed. This time I tried not to until we got to the questions, and now we
Try not
have
to.
another meeting that's supposed to have started 5 minutes ago. But we do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Mrs. Ferguson, thank you for setting this up.
Absolutely,
Arranging for
my
this for a
pleasure.
meeting
We
when
could
we
go
did
on
have
all
the
night
time to
about
do it.
this, honestly.
Reach out to us for the graduation. That was phenomenal last year.
Oh, for the sealed
Oh,
by
the sealed
literacy
by
literacy.
ceremony, yes.
Okay, topics for future meetings, the list is here if any of you want. Really, I'm waiting for the full committee to be formed, and that will be, leadership will take care of that between now and the next board meeting,
Next board meeting, we'll have
probably.
it, yep.
And we'll know who the committee members are, and we can then decide what we want to take for topics. The one thing that two things that don't show up here that we will need to get started on fairly quickly is the alumnus of the year.
Yep,
Distinguished
coming up.
Alumnus.
Yep.
And that, we'll start talking about that next month, so
Yep.
that'll be on next month's agenda. And it is one of this committee's responsibilities to start the process for board goals and get them ready to present to the board. So we will be doing that. We'll wait until we see who the whole committee is as of next meeting. So with that, it's time for comments for the good of the order. Ronnie.
I will say we had quite a few multilingual learners in Rudolph, and it was such a pleasure to work with those students, and they were so excited. And I think that is a great opportunity for speaking and understanding and learning, for them to be speaking on stage in a language that isn't their native language. Really was amazing. So thanks.
Jeff.
Thanks for a great presentation. It was really appreciated. The showing us the chart that showed how many students we have in the district that represent, our community as a whole and our English learners.
Sue?
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Mr. Clegg, for coming. We don't often get visitors. It's nice to have somebody come.
Yeah, when's the next meeting and when's the next time parents to speak?
I can tell you that when we finish up here. How's that?
Joanne?
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. It's such a dynamic program, and our kids are working so hard that I'm just happy to have that opportunity.
Excellent presentation. That was lovely. The videos were lovely. The letter was great. It was beautiful.
Kristen?
Thank you, Ms. Creedon. Sorry, I can't call you Joanne.
Please.
That was very nice. I appreciate the charts as well, so thank you.
That's great, thanks. Ellen?
The passion shows, which is great, and it takes a village so to have all of that happening on top of everything else that's happening. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone over there? Josh? Marissa? Sir? No? Okay. Thank you all for attending, and thank you for presenting, and et cetera. So, can we adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? We're adjourned.
7:04. To order at 7:08. You all set?
Yeah. Josh, you're all
Okay,
good?
roll call, John, me, Mr. Mangling. And everyone else is here. Approval of the agenda,
Motion to approve, I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second, all in favor, any discussion, whatever. Approval of the minutes,
I move to approve the minutes.
second, any discussion, all in favor. Public participation, you would like to speak? Just state your name. Oh, I have to read this first and then you can state your name and address. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas, or matters of concern related to all the duties and responsibilities of this committee. This committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. The time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers and will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. Yes, sir.
So my name is Jameson Clegg. I live at 68 Jackson Street, Torrington, Connecticut. I want to speak on behalf of my stepdaughter that I've been ridiculed saying that it's not my daughter, even though that she has only known me as my father as her whole life. But I mean, the school doesn't really want to accept that. We've already done what we had to. We've talked to supers and all that upper stuff and stuff like that. But this is now the 9th time my daughter has come home with a black eye or with some type of injury, with limited communication between the school and our family. We don't get how that is a policy where, hey, I'm showing up here. I still have no answers of why my daughter came home the way that she did today after multiple calls to the school. So how are you honoring the relationship thing that you guys were just talking about if you guys are not reaching out to the families and communicating to them? And this is gonna be 9 times. This is not, this is middle of the school year. How many more times is this gonna happen to my daughter without something happening? Because I literally stood up for my daughter before. My daughter has gotten a unidentified suspension, which had no write-up for it, which I don't get how you guys have that as a policy, how someone could get suspended without a write-up or a former communication or anything like that. So I would just kind of like this answered. We've had meetings about it and stuff like that. Haven't had answers of the previous 8 times, and we're still waiting for one on the 9th. You guys want to honor what you guys say? I would like to hear an answer of why that's happening.
Okay, that's not something that this committee would handle, but you went through the proper channels, so you went to the principal or the
next
teacher,
step is
then the
going to
principal,
mayor. Yep.
and then you went to the superintendent?
Yep.
And you met with the superintendent?
Met with her.
And met with the assistant superintendent?
And with the superintendent.
Yep.
It's not something that this committee handles, it would be something the superintendent handles, so.
I can bring it back to Mr. Wilson tomorrow.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing.
Yeah, do they, but I would
I
like
mean,
the committee to know
because
about
that's
it, but
the-
the
that's
next
the-
level
the
I'm
ch-
going to is the mayor, and I've already notified them that I will be talking to a lawyer. If it hits double digits, that's not gonna look good. No answers, stuff like that, not really looking good. But I mean, it keeps on happening, I'm bringing it to you guys now, very patiently, very calmly.
You have put it on the record by coming and
Yes, I've gone
speaking
to the
tonight,
police,
so
and I went to the
Right.
police again
that's
today.
a good thing to do.
Yeah, and you have everything documented? Okay. I will follow up with the superintendent.
Okay.
I'll also follow up with Ms. Ferguson. Let's see what can happen the next.
But it's pretty sad I have to come here to get answers.
Yeah, I'm sorry for what you're going through, but we'll
5-year-old girl.
we'll see what we can do. Okay?
I'm glad that you guys set that for standards for boys to be able to hit girls too, because most of the time it's been boys hitting my daughter.
Okay, but that's not a standard we set. Just know that.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay, discussion and next steps. Torrington Public School staff attendance policy. This is attached.
It is attached, and you will remember, if you were at the last month's meeting when we brought this forward, that we had some staff members attend and contribute to the discussion, add some input, and share some concerns. There were some requests. You will see that there's some highlighted verbiage that we've added, or there's a place where there's been some strikeouts, where we felt there was some redundancy. I think it's important to just frame this conversation again by reiterating that the purpose of having this policy is in no way intended to call out any particular employee group. It is really just to help guide discussion and conversation with staff. Kim can certainly, provide statistics that really underscore the need for us to have a policy such as this. It actually, I kind of want this to go on record that, Mr. Wilson drafted this policy for us with the help of some other policies from districts around the state that have had for quite some time staff attendance policies. And I learned very recently that this particular policy has language in it that was actually crafted by someone who works for the CEA. So that may be something that would make staff feel a little bit better about it.
And I think just to reiterate that this, the language really is so that all staff are benefiting from this, because when we have excessive absenteeism, then it's the other staff that are present that have to either step in and cover classes and things of that nature. So we're doing this for our students and for our staff. So that's really the point. And the staff members, their language in here about when you have an excessive absence, like 5 days in a row for one illness, that counts as one absence, not 5. So we're still going to be allowing people to be home when they're not well and take care of themselves and take care of themselves first. We want that for sure. So the language in here is designed to protect that. And it says unscheduled absences as well. So those medical appointments that people schedule 3 weeks out, that's a scheduled absence. So that wouldn't be counting against somebody. It's the staff that are calling out regularly, excessively, and doing it like an hour before the beginning of the day. So really it's a small population that this is speaking to.
And it's also to protect everyone.
Correct.
It's not meant to be punitive.
Not at all.
Helpful.
Right.
Supports. Ways that we can support and help.
Any questions, comments?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I had great, I spoke a lot about this last time. A lot of people have reached out to me in the last month. It is generally not a popular thing with my colleagues, and I'm sure you can understand why. But I just want that noted. I understand the concerns. I understand the need for such a policy, but it's...
Mark, can you share why? Because I really don't understand why. Truly, honestly.
I've heard a lot that the language makes people feel as if they're going to be, like a gotcha kind of thing. People use time. Teachers are accustomed to we have 2 personal days, and 15 sick days. So now they're feeling like, well, you're not really giving us 15 sick days, you're giving us something else. So they feel like that there's language in here that could create problems for people. And I also think for some people, it almost feels like a privacy thing. I'll speak about myself, although I tend not to. Like I have a disease. I have a sickness, and I need time off for that occasionally. So for me to speak about it, to need to talk to my principal about it feels a little bit. I also have a mentally ill child. And those are cases where I've had to take. I've had to take unscheduled time because I have a voicemail that my son has been arrested and gotta go. And I think that there's people who have things in their life that are complicated and they feel like this could be used in a punitive way. Although, all the conversations I have, it's not going to happen, but, so people don't feel 100% comfortable with it. And, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Thank you for sharing.
No, and that's helpful, but that's the exact reason why FMLA exists, right? So FMLA is not included in this policy. So if you have a legitimate illness or you have a family member who has a legitimate illness, you provide us with the documentation and we want to support people in that. So that would not be held against anybody in accordance with this policy, as long as they're abiding by the FMLA policy, which is already a Board of Ed policy and already outlined in all the collective bargaining agreements. So those things should already be in place and already being utilized for anybody in those kinds of situations. And that's what we're here for in HR. And that's why we do the HR site visits, so that we can help guide people through those things. So if the proper paperwork is on file for somebody in those kinds of instances, then that would be completely excluded from this policy.
And I understand that. I mean, I've just heard a lot of people coming to me and saying, we don't love this, and for a variety of reasons. I think people never like when they feel like their freedoms are being infringed upon. And whether, I understand, like we had this conversation, I just thought somebody who's sitting in my seat should say that the teachers had some reservations about it.
Yeah, no.
Rather than beating things up again, which I don't want to do. I'm just trying to say, like, not everybody loved this one.
Yeah.
We understand why. We understand the rationale. It's just, as you and I talked about last time, it's sad that it has gotten to this point.
So
Where
Mark,
you need this
would it
policy.
maybe be helpful if something is put in here, like any questions direct to the HR department?
I think so. I think so.
And that would soften it, and then anyone who has a question, they know where to go, rather than saying, oh my God, what are they doing to me? They're handcuffing me, I can't do anything. And rather than getting all upset and getting other colleagues upset, it's like, please reach out to HR.
Yeah, right. And
Would that be helpful?
I think it would. And it also,
I don't know where to put it, but.
I don't know either.
Maybe also an explanation as to what Kim was, and Kim, if I can ask a quick question, FMLA can be taken intermittently, correct?
Correct.
So if you have like a blanket issue, you could take days sporadically, correct?
Yes.
And it's all covered, okay.
Yep.
And we
And the
have a
FMLA is in
policy.
here,
Yeah.
like it's already listed here that workers' comp isn't included, FMLA isn't included, military leave, jury duty is not included. And then the piece about the unscheduled consecutive absence in excess of 1 day, if it's for one specific illness, like you have the flu and you're out for 4 or 5 days in a row, that counts as one absence for this policy. It's 4 sick days, but it
And
counts
just
as one
maybe
absence.
At the end, for clarification.
Sure.
Any clarifications,
Yeah.
please contact the HR department.
And I also wanted to say, and again, I won't take much time other than to say this. When I came in yesterday, I met briefly with a colleague who was coughing and hacking and sick as a dog. And yet they felt the need to be back in school to be with their kids. This morning when I came into school, I shared an elevator with a woman who sprained her ligaments in her knee and had one arm in a sling. So she was hobbling around with one arm strapped to her chest. She said she had a note from her doctor that she could be out, but she wanted to be back here with her kids because that's what teachers do. So I just want it to be known that so many teachers are coming to work all the time, whether they maybe should or should not use some of these days. And that should be reflected that the great majority of us are doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
And I think we tried to say that at the very beginning here, that, you know, in the highlighted, right at the get-go, we value each employee for the work they do every day to meet the needs of our students, because we know that. We recognize that. But as Kim shared at the last meeting, I mean, the numbers, there are 2 women camped out in her office from dawn till dusk, making phone calls, trying to get substitutes, you know, and again, not trying to point a finger at anyone. Situations happen, and, you know, I've got issues too, but we have kids to educate. And, you know, Mark, you and I have had this conversation too, even when you're the one covering for a class, no offense, but that's not ideal, right? If you're going to cover for the math class, you're not the math teacher, right? I'm not critiquing your math knowledge, but
I take that so personally.
but, you know,
Nobody can teach your class as good as you. That's the point.
exactly. Like, I couldn't step into your room and do it justice for your kids. It's such a disruption to the whole flow. And again, it's not a secret. I'm overstating the obvious. This is a problem that's being experienced nationwide in every single school, in every single town, in every single state.
And not just private. I mean, not just
Not
public.
just public, right? I don't know what the answer is either. And the intent of this is certainly not to make people feel badly, or, you know, to make people think that we expect them to come to work sick. It isn't. You know that. I mean, you know that. It's
But also the faculty members that aren't here don't hear it firsthand, so they think differently, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were going to. I think there's a perception.
Jeff asked first.
I read this from the outside, and after having been at the last meeting, because I don't live this every day, in my world, it doesn't work the same, but I don't get this as being punitive. This is, you need some policy that we don't have to address this, the probably very few outlier situations that we have no policy in place to address to help everybody. To Sue's point, I see teachers covering topics and subjects, and they're losing their prep times, and these are all things that are people do because you all support each other, right? I mean, you help because you can, you should, and you want to make it as best you can for all the students in the district. But we can do that much better if we have a policy that helps to rein in probably a very small number of people that are, whether it's repetitive or a new issue. I mean, HR is here to help with that, but if there are people who are abusing the policy, it helps everybody to have some teeth to be able to go talk to them. I'm sure it starts a dialogue. Maybe some people don't realize that. Maybe there's a real reason, in which case we know ahead of time, we can get better coverage for it. And I totally get it, but I also get the softness piece, and I appreciate the changes that we kind of suggested from last time.
This policy isn't aimed at teachers. This applies to everybody, right?
Correct.
Administrators, central office, teachers, paras, et cetera.
right. In fact, if I went through the whole thing and I tried to replace the word teacher with staff member. So if I missed one, please call me out on it.
No, but it just seems like teachers
Where is
seem
that?
to be looking at it as targeting them.
The bottom of the second paragraph, the last sentence, in those cases, the teachers must adhere to our absence reporting procedures.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Staff members. Yep. Thank you.
Got it.
Or we can put employee or whatever. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, John, you're right. I think we've only had teachers come forward to give feedback. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here a little bit. And the flip side of what Jeff said, I can see how this could be construed as punitive from a teacher perspective. I see the point coming from an HR perspective as well, in the cost associated with bringing in subs every day. I mean, temp agencies alone are inflating by 30-40% to cover their costs, which is understandable. Forgive me because I'm new, has there been any talk about a possible stipend at the end of the year?
Yes, there has been.
Okay, and what's the What's the status of that?
I think a lot of people think that that's paying people for doing their job, for what they should do anyway.
But if we're saving money by not using subs,
It has to be probably part of the contract, has to be negotiated with the bargaining unit.
because I know if I was gonna get a lump sum at the end of the year, I would not be calling out sick. I mean,
I think most people in general don't call out sick.
it's a small percentage. Am I, based on your numbers that you showed us, which were eye-opening at least? Yes.
So it's a large number of days, but by a small number of human beings.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but just like when we talk about students, right, when the staff members talk about students and behaviors, a large number of our students are doing the right thing. The small number of students that aren't doing the right thing take up a lot of our time. It's the same with administration when it comes to attendance managing and things of that nature. So the small number of people that are out an excessive amount of time are taking up a large number of our time. So it's less about the cost of the sub per se, because that's not costing us right now because we can't find the sub. So I'm just saying, so the cost the cost of the dollar of the sub is not as much. It's about having our highly qualified people that we know are great teachers teaching in front of our students, and also not losing their prep time and their valuable time that should be their time. So.
And that's exactly why the people Mark was talking about were there, because they have an obligation to their kids, which they recognize and want to fulfill more than they want anything else. And I appreciate those people.
Right. And this would also help the administrators. Help them, better is the wrong word, but better, more opportunity to speak to the offender, per se. Do you know what I mean? The administrator can have more of a conversation.
Well, I think it guides the conversation.
Right there.
I, in a very ideal world, it allows people who are having problems to get access to help that I don't think that they.
Maybe they don't know about it.
It applies consistency across the district too. That's the other piece. Like it applies consistency.
That's key as well.
Right.
I can definitely see all sides to this. I really can. But in the same sense is, man, we ask a lot of our teachers, and man, they work hard for very little benefit, in my opinion. I mean, they probably need a day off once in a while.
The other thing that, sorry, Mark, the other thing that I think we need to be mindful of too is that there are now very, very strict attendance policies for students. And we are holding kids and families, right? I mean, there has to, I mean, the state is constantly monitoring districts for student absence.
And anything above 10% is chronic, and this really aligns with that same expectation. So we expect our staff members to model the behavior that we expect from our students. So why wouldn't we want to have a policy that codifies?
So many valid points to all views.
Hi. I just have a question and wondering if there can be an addition added to define what scheduled time off is, because I think that, going to a lot of what Mark has said, that might help in understanding the policy and what scheduled time off is. Because when Kim, you just said, and you've got a doctor's appointment and you put that in 3 weeks ago, that doesn't count against you. That's scheduled time off. I think to define what scheduled time off is would be helpful in this process.
So that is down at the bottom, isn't it? An absence is defined as any unscheduled absence from work during scheduled work hours, including failing to report for scheduled or unscheduled overtime. So.
Right, but when you say like doctor's appointment, to me, if I'm calling in, even though I've scheduled that, to me that I'm supposed to be at work, I'm not going to be at work because I have a doctor's appointment. I guess I think there's that definition, like even I wonder family illness. My dad has an appointment. I need to drive my dad. Is that, and I put that in 3 weeks ahead of time. Is that a scheduled absence? That's my wondering.
More clarification is
more clarification of what what we mean,
So
what
under
this policy means.
definitions, absence, scheduled, unscheduled, unscheduled absence, scheduled absence.
This really is trying to get to the daily call outs.
I think that's
Right.
important, because when
Yeah.
we're talking, what I'm understanding you say as unscheduled is I'm calling in an hour before I'm supposed to be at work. But I'm not sure that
Couldn't you add a sentence somewhere? You know,
About what Sandy said?
something along the lines of a scheduled absences, you know, that
I'm
must
just
be,
trying to say like how it doesn't like.
must be done 72 hours ahead or something. Is there some way to?
Oh, to kind of.
Or unscheduled is anything under.
24 hours notice or something?
Yeah, that's
something,
24 hours, that's okay.
something.
something that just clarifies that a bit, I think is important, because I think that also will help individuals to understand what we're talking about, what we're really talking about when we're talking about when I'm out for 4 instances in this period of time. Oh, but it was a doctor's appointment, it was scheduled. Okay, that doesn't count against me. So that kind of clarifying, I think is really important to, in that messaging, to help people understand what this policy really is about.
Does that make sense?
I'm not sure how to feel about a time frame though, because then I'm worried that somebody's going to have a cough 3 days in advance and start to put their like. I feel more comfortable with with a reason code, like, you know, if you've used the code medical appointment, like I don't know, I don't have.
But with students, you have unexcused and excused, and those are explained.
But
right?
even the excused absences count towards their 10%.
Yes, everything.
So
counts.
everything counts.
Everything counts.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Whether
this
it's
is
excused or
actually,
unexcused, it still
this is-
counts towards their 10%.
So can something be put in there then to contact HR for, or something? to
Yeah, I mean, we
that
can
effect?
definitely put something in about
No?
contacting HR. That's not an issue. It's the time frame that I'm questioning.
But that would be
helpfulness, like.
But that would be a paper trail that you would have from ASOP or Kelly or whatever it's called now. You know how many people are doing the 1 hour call outs.
Yeah.
Or the 2 hour call outs. And sometimes as a teacher who's taught for 25 years, you know, it's a great job. I love it. I've been doing it for 25 years. I try to show up as much as possible, but to be real, you know, I don't know another job other than working in a hospital where you're exposed to as many sick people as teachers are.
That's true.
You know, like I have germs and boogers all over my desk all day, and I have kids sneezing and blowing. And I'm not even kindergarten. And you know what? And a lot of times I can't tell you how many people are like, yeah, I'll be fine tomorrow. I'll be fine. When I wake up, I'm not fine. You know, that happens sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
And if it happens a couple times a year, whatever. If it happens.
Right, and if it happens
17
a couple times a
year,
year, then you're fine. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's not.
But I think what Sandy's trying to get to, I could be wrong, is that, okay, say you're not here, someone else is here, they interpret it differently because it's not clarified enough.
So we can, Kim and I can work on the definition, and we can try to put more clarity around what a scheduled and an unscheduled absence is. Is that what you're asking? And that's kind of where you're at.
Right, so
Yeah.
scheduled would be
or-
approved ahead of time.
it could even go right with the chronic absenteeism, where you write something along the lines of absent patterns, i.e. taking the same day, or a pattern of
Mondays and Fridays.
same day call outs or something like that. Something, I don't know. I don't have the right answers.
All right, I think we kind of understand the marching orders. We'll look at the definitions, Kim, okay, of those two, and we'll try to make those more clear. Yeah.
But we want to get this.
We'd like to. Is it something that, I don't know if there's still more discussion.
Is it something that you could wordsmith and then get to full board meeting and then we can discuss again there?
Yes. I mean, that's, we can do
Because it
that.
would
I think
come
we
out
can
in
do
the
that.
packet ahead of time, and so.
And then you can look at
if you
it,
have any
and if
questions
you
or
have
whatever,
feedback.
you could contact me,
Absolutely.
and then we could discuss at the full board, and if.
Yeah, it's really not a big, right, we're not looking for huge changes, it's minor.
No,
Yeah.
right, but I mean, if it happens that it's, becomes bigger than we think it, that right now we think it, might be, that it can come back the next time. But we want to get it done now, so.
Yeah,
Right, like I'm just thinking if we
And
just
you
added
know what-
medical appointment as an option here, and then call it a day, like.
And
that's
you
what
know
I'm
what
thinking.
we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will that work?
So we'll work on that and we'll plan on bringing it to the board if it's fine with you guys.
Is that?
We're just, like what Mark was just saying, in thinking how we handle even our families with students with that chronic absenteeism, and we're trying to help put strategies to help them improve. We often get a reason from them saying, well, the past 3 weeks, this happened. Okay, we understand things happen, but for the past 4 years, you have had this steady pattern. And I think focusing on, there's that handful of the employees that you're trying to address that have that chronic pattern. Does that help if I explain it that way? I don't wanna-
But I think this would help the administrator be able to discuss that with the offender.
Correct.
Do you have something?
No, all I want to say is we need to get something done soon, and if we can, it needs to come before the board meeting this month. We've already put it off too long.
Okay, so we'll bring it to the board with those changes, and if, when it comes out, please let me know. Or come to the, you do anyway. Okay. Okay, so, Kim,
Yes,
crosswalk.
Yes.
Almost done.
copies of the crosswalk.
It only took 12 years, but here we are.
Yes,
That's sarcasm. You guys
now you're gonna
have
ask me
some?
about the color codes, which I have a key at the bottom, but let me see if I can make sure I remember how to
I have
explain it
one.
all, so, yeah.
Thanks, that one.
You're welcome.
We can all look at.
So on the last page is a color code where I tried to explain what the different color codes mean. And also wanted to give you the history of where we started in September of 2021, just to kind of kudos to this committee. 68 policies were moved into the correct series. 28 policies were newly adopted or corrected. 12 additional policies were updated or added. And we do have 2 policies that we didn't bring forward. One, both of which I think we've talked about, and one was the nepotism, and the other one was about the admission to public schools before age 5. So that one's kind of on hold because of the legislation being on hold right now, or they're looking at the legislation. So that's kind of where we've been and where we are. So outside of that, we've done everything. So as far as comparing the two and what was missing. So.
But we do have a few that we'd like to bring next month that we feel based on Shipman's recommendation
Okay.
that need to be looked at sooner rather than later.
Okay, can,
Yep.
one of them the nepotism? I think we should also.
That's up to the board. If you want to bring that, we can, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that
Let's
one.
look at it. Well,
What was the other one that we said we really needed to get?
So, yeah, so Shipman in October did kind of model policy changes. And so what I did was I kind of went through them to kind of determine which ones had some more significant, more urgent changes than others. And so the other ones that we talked about were administration of student medications. There were some revisions to that for this year based on legislation. And we thought we should bring that one along with our Narcan policy. And I don't have the number, so I don't know, Sue, if you can help me out. Yep.
read my mind.
So 5005 is the administration of the student school medications by school personnel.
I have 5005.
Yep.
Okay, it was bullying,
Oh,
right?
Oh, wait a second, we're down here.
This is 5005, bullying and safe school climate plan.
It was 5005. Is
No.
that how this works? What's column is this, right there? See 5005? is next.
No, 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 but so the left side is Shipman's model, the right side is ours. So don't look at the left.
Oh, I see.
The left is not, the left, where there's a line.
So the policy number is to the left of the title of the policy, Ellen, so
in the middle
500.
Yeah, so this here
So 5005.
has no reflection on the numbers. This is just Shipman's side.
Okay,
So don't look at that
Okay.
first column at
so
all,
5005,
right? Go
Okay.
over to the right is the administration of the
Yep.
school medications.
okay.
And then, which one is the Narcan policy?
I'm just looking for Narcan.
Autism is on the.
We have to bring, the recommendation is that the Narcan policy and the administration of medication become one policy, and that Narcan is just embedded into 5005. Yes.
And then the student discipline, there's an update regarding cannabis. Based on new laws with Connecticut, there are some clear, so that was a
That's
Shipman recommendation.
5030.
Student discipline?
Yeah.
The naloxone is 2035,
Thank you.
but, so that would be with,
503. Oh,
5005, right?
5005.
And then the third one was the recess and play-based learning, which on ours should be physical activity, undirected play, and student discipline.
which is in the 5,000.
Yeah.
5031.
Thank you. And so that one has an update where they're actually changing the name of it to recess and play-based learning, because there is an update that requires play-based learning starting in 2024-25. So there's updates to that. So those ones seemed like the most urgent ones. The other ones have just some really minor language updates, except for high school graduation requirements. Do we need to bring that one forward?
Yeah, we brought that forward in the fall, and then we were gonna take another look at some changes with mastery-based assessment. So, but we don't have to bring all these in February.
Correct.
That one can wait till March, but we need to
Okay,
get some
I
of these.
think we should bring these, and if there's any little ones that just need, like you need to add a legal number or whatever,
Mhm.
if there's a few of those you want, so maybe one or two of these and something that you just need to add a number or whatever, because it can go rather quickly.
Okay, all right, we'll look at that. So some of this is gonna go quickly too.
Right, so I mean,
Yeah.
if we do all those policies and then there's three that you just need to add legal, it can all be done at once.
Okay, we'll look at it.
Is 4070 really from the year I was born?
Which one is 47?
4070 is a reduction in professional staff.
Probably.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a couple that were pretty old.
I was throwing it out there.
The ones from 1975 are no longer in here, so. that's-
Wow.
And all of our blue ones tend to be a decade old.
I was a freshman in college.
Do we have-
You got me beat, Jeff. I was born in 80.
Yeah, see, there it is. Old.
Yeah,
Yikes,
yeah. So
yikes.
Riding horses to school.
So
Not
absent of the
Maybe a
Shipman,
tether them.
once we get through the ones that were recommended by Shipman for this year, then we can maybe tackle some of those ones that are maybe more than a decade old
Well-
since we've looked at them and kind
Right.
of start to compare those to the Shipman
Right,
model.
but we
policy
needed to
index.
clean up what we had, and
Correct.
that's what the policy committee function is, to go through all the policies
Yeah.
every year.
No, I think we're
But
doing
we-
great. I
oh
mean,
my
I
gosh,
really
we did
appreciate what Kim
yes.
has done to really
The two
guide
of you.
and frame this
Thank you.
work. Well, I'm gonna
Thank you.
defer to Kim. She's done most
Just
of
as a
it.
newcomer, this is really nice to see like this. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely
We've
have a
come a long
plan.
way.
yeah, I can see
Yes,
that.
Always team effort.
Yes, when we started this, together, working on it with Ellen, I mean, we had policies that dated back to the 70s.
I
Yeah,
got that one.
There's still one on
Yeah,
there.
There's
yeah.
still, yes.
We addressed that one in January.
In homage and stuff.
I only
yeah.
saving
counted,
that
I
one
only
for
counted
last.
6 of them from, that has a number of 70, 80, 90, only 6. So
Okay.
that's not,
That's
No,
not
I
so
think
bad.
we're doing well.
yes,
No.
and then anything else new that comes in, to
Right.
have to.
Right, and that's also what happens, is we're on a roll and we think we know what we're doing, and then we get notified.
July 1 hits and the new legislation comes on board and we've got
And-
10 policies
And
to
those are
update
all
with
like,
new
hurry up,
laws.
do these now, do these yesterday,
Yeah,
so we have to pause on our crosswalk and, you know, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
This was a huge undertaking. Thank you so much.
Did the age 5 just pass today or yesterday? Did I hear that on the news?
The age 5?
Yeah.
So that.
It did pass last year, yeah.
So that's already, right now, the state is looking at not allowing waivers. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So that's why we're kind of pausing before we issue any sort of, you know,
What's the
information.
current cutoff?
It
Yeah, you have
was
to be 5 before
okay.
December.
It was
Okay.
January 1,
Yes.
honestly, but
Yeah.
now they've made it, what,
September
September?
1.
September
It was-
1, but then they came back, they backpedaled and said, but,
State or districts can apply for waivers.
or
Yeah.
parents
Parents
can
can-
request
Yeah.
a waiver.
I have 2 burr babies. Go to kindergarten. See ya.
In the early 60s, it was January 31st.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think it's
Wow.
important to note too that Connecticut was the last state with a cutoff of that late of the January 1st.
Yes,
It's,
yes,
you know, so
yeah.
what the legislation is doing is looking at what the research that's been done and what all other states have been doing
Right.
for a very
Right.
long time.
Yeah, yeah.
We were way behind.
And we're
So it's
studying
still
it
December at
very
this point.
closely.
It'll be
Starting
it's
July
September.
1st.
Starting July, it'll go back
It's
to September.
September,
So for
but
the
the
next
question
school
that's
year.
out there right
The
now
question
is
whether
whether or not.
parents can
Yeah.
can
Put a
apply
waiver
for the
in.
waiver.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're waiting on that.
Gotcha.
But didn't they say they can no longer apply for the religious waiver? But they can apply for a different waiver, no?
You're getting confused maybe with
Vaccination.
vaccination?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Yeah, this is just
religious
about
waiver was about
attending.
vaccination.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just about children enrolling and reaching the age of where they're eligible to enroll.
Yeah.
So the state is right now, there's a debate about whether or not if Kristen has a child who doesn't meet the cutoff, but she wants her to go to school, go to kindergarten, she could request a waiver. And so there's a debate about whether Connecticut's going to allow that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
John is very.
I know. Comments for the good of the order. John.
Good meeting.
Good meeting. I just want to say that the purpose of this is not to ask somebody to come to school with the flu. Right, to everybody's point, you see people who are dedicated to their children, their own and their students, who are there with the sniffles, and 95 or 99.9% of these people are doing the very best they can for our kids, and that's obvious when you walk through any school, which we've all done.
Absolutely.
That everybody's there, but there are a certain subset of people who unfortunately don't, for whatever reason, don't follow that same mantra that I'm the best person to be in my classroom for my kid at all times, and I get it. So to all the teachers and all staff, I mean, we appreciate that you come every day. This is not targeting anybody. It's not punitive. It's just trying to get everybody to come to work when they should be at work. When you're not supposed to be at work, everybody's smart enough to know I've got the flu. Please stay home.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the conversation.
Okay.
Great, I think great meeting, and I really do appreciate the work that everyone in the schools does every day, and I just, as an HR person, I always believe that when you have clear expectations of what success looks like, everybody has a better opportunity to be successful, and that's why I like putting stuff in writing. But it's really meant for the better operations of the whole district. But I value everybody, and I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday
Goodbye.
reset. Happy New Year.
Goodbye.
Apparently, they don't agree.
They don't agree.
All right.
I'm really not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to make sure everybody feels heard.
You're never difficult.
That's probably not true, but thank you.
Well, not at this table anyway, Kristen.
I also don't try to be difficult, at least now.
We're going to have to separate those two.
No, appreciate the opportunity to be here and learn. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good meeting.
Kudos to the amount of work, and thank you
Yeah.
all for the amount of work that goes into doing policies, because I don't think people really get that.
Yeah, it's kind of dry.
But it
Kind of.
drives our school system. I mean, so
Right,
thank you.
absolutely.
I appreciate the conversation tonight. I think it's important to have that open conversation and dialogue. And, you know, Mark presents the teacher perspective on this because he's a teacher sitting on the committee.
But I think that other employee groups may not be as aware of what policies are to come forth to make statements about them. But I think it's important that it's clear, and you've made it very clear, is that this policy is about all employees, not just teachers. But I think that teachers do take their jobs very seriously, and that's why it's something like an attendance policy. And it's teachers who are thinking about that and who are so conscientious about getting there and doing their job every day that worry that how does this impact me, because I'm doing the very best that I can. So thank you.
Josh? Again, thank you, and I respect the troublemakers in the room.
Glad to see that hasn't gone away.
Yes, because we need everybody's perspective, you know, to make things work, and but it's done in such a nice way that I appreciate that. So thank you, everyone, and all your hard work. Motion to adjourn.
So
7:54, John and me.
Wow, John, you must be proud over there.